Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are completely demystifying exactly how we automate deployments using modern cloud infrastructure. We're going to break down how enterprise teams literally take code from a developer's laptop straight into production on Azure, without breaking a sweat, all by leveraging the sheer power of CI/CD strategies.
But before we get to that whole cloud utopia, let's be totally honest for a second. Have you ever crashed production with a manual deployment? Yeah, if you've been in the industry long enough, you probably just felt a shiver down your spine. We've all lived that visceral nightmare, right? It's 4:30 p.m. on a Friday, you manually copying files over, running a few SQL scripts by hand, maybe remote desktoping into a server to restart IaaS. And then suddenly, everything just stops working.
Because we all know what happens next. Red error screens are just lighting up your monitors. You've got hard server downtime. Your help desk is absolutely flooded with support tickets from incredibly frustrated users, and the business is just bleeding lost customers. This is the exact chaos and massive business impact that manual mistakes create. For a dev team, it is just incredibly stressful. You aren't building cool new features anymore. You're just putting out fires caused by human error during deployment.
Okay, let's dive into this. It's time to pivot from the dark ages of manual deployment into the modern era, and look at the shift to automation. We are finally moving away from those archaic traditional methods. Things like dragging and dropping files over FTP, using remote desktop, manually restarting servers, or trying to execute SQL scripts line by line. Let's be real, it's slow, it doesn't scale, and it is highly, highly error-prone. Instead, we're stepping into a completely modern paradigm. Now we use Git for source control, GitHub Actions for automation, Docker to actually containerize our apps so they can run anywhere, and Kubernetes to orchestrate the whole shebang. This isn't just swapping out a few tools, it's a fundamental shift in how we even think about delivering software safely. And the engine driving that shift? It's CI/CD. That stands for continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment. Basically, think of these as the automated pathways for your code to actually reach production. Instead of a human manually moving files around, a CI/CD pipeline takes over and automates the entire deployment process. It's the ultimate solution to replace those old manual file copies, ensuring that every single change is built, tested, and deployed in a way that's perfectly repeatable every single time.
Let's move on and take a look at what happens inside the CI/CD pipeline.
So when we talk about how CI/CD pipelines automate deployment, this specific flow right here is the absolute heartbeat of the operation. Let's break it down. Step 1 is the code commit. A developer finishes their work, pushes it to a repository, and boom, that action automatically triggers Step 2, build and test. This is where the code is compiled and validated. Once it gets a passing grade, we hit Step 3, containerize, where the application is packaged up into a standalone executable unit. And finally, Step 4, deploy to production. The code smoothly, entirely automatically moves right into the live environment. No human hands required whatsoever.
And what's super cool is how this maps directly to enterprise tools to create a seamless journey. For source control, your code lives safely in GitHub. When that code is committed, it triggers the CI or build pipeline using either Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions. Once the build is done and containerized, well, that package needs a safe place to sit, right? That's your artifact storage, which is handled perfectly by Azure Container Registry, or ACR for short. Finally, for hosting and production, that container gets pulled down and runs in Azure Kubernetes Service, or AKS. It is just this beautifully integrated architecture from a developer's workstation straight up to the cloud.
But hold on a second. How do we know the automated deployment won't just, automatically push broken code? Well, that's exactly where pipeline gates come in. Inside the pipeline itself, we have these automated health checks. The pipeline runs unit testing to catch bugs right away. It does security scanning to make absolutely sure no vulnerabilities are slipping through. And only if those pass does it actually move on to publishing artifacts in the Docker image build. Plus, for your really critical environments, you can even inject deployment approvals, basically requiring a quick manual sign-off from a manager before that final push. It completely eliminates human error while keeping quality control incredibly rigorous.
Now that our pipeline is automated and locked down securely, how do we get that code to our users without them noticing even a blip? Let's check out zero downtime deployment strategies. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how a blue-green deployment completely eliminates downtime. Seriously, it's brilliant. Imagine you have two perfectly identical production environments. We'll call the live one blue and the idle one green. Your CI/CD pipeline goes ahead and deploys the new update to the green environment. It's fully in production, but the catch is no customers are using it yet. You get to test it out safely, and when you are 100% confident, you just flip a switch at the router level. Almost instantly, all user traffic moves from blue over to green.
zero downtime, zero dropped connections. Then we've got another fantastic strategy, the canary deployment. Think of this as your automated safety net. Instead of releasing the new software version to everybody all at once, the pipeline routes maybe, say, just 5% of your traffic to the new version. You monitor those users super closely. If errors suddenly spike, no problem. You just route them right back. But if everything stays stable out there in the real world, you gradually increase that percentage all the way up to 100. You literally get to test real-world stability without ever risking your entire customer base.
And of course, we have the rolling deployment. Say you've got 10 servers running your app. A rolling deployment updates them one by one, or maybe in small batches. The automation here really feels like magic. The Azure infrastructure just seamlessly takes a node offline, updates it with the new version straight from your automated pipeline, puts it back into rotation, and then just moves on to the next one, entirely without human intervention. Your application maintains full availability the entire time.
Plus, there are even more built-in automated safeties that just give developers incredible peace of mind when they're pushing to production. We can rely on tools like Azure App Service deployment slots, which function a lot like those blue-green environments but are built right into Azure's platform as a service. We also use feature flags. These are awesome because they let us deploy new code, but we keep the actual feature hidden from users until we explicitly toggle it on. And hey, if all else fails, because our CI/CD pipeline stores every single historical artifact, instant rollback strategies mean that reverting to a known good state is quite literally just a single click away. But automating the deployment itself is really only half the battle. Once your code actually hits production, you need to know exactly what it's doing. So let's look at monitoring for ultimate success. Because to truly master modern deployment, your pipeline needs to automatically feed critical telemetry right into real-time dashboards so your team can see everything working seamlessly together. For checking your underlying server and container health, you're going to rely on Azure Monitor. To see deep down into your actual code, like I'm talking catching slow SQL queries or pinpointing failed API calls, you use Application Insights. And to visualize all of this beautifully, maybe on a massive screen in your office, you pull all that data straight into Grafana. You aren't just guessing if the deployment was successful anymore, you are actually verifying it in real time.
Which brings us to the real payoff. I mean, why does all this actually matter? Because the difference is just night and day. We started this explainer talking about stressed out developers who are absolutely terrified of Friday deployments. Well, the payoff of everything we just covered is massive cloud scalability, true zero downtime, easily hitting your enterprise success metrics, and honestly, a truly happy development team. When you trust your pipeline, deploying code just becomes a non-event. It becomes incredibly boring. And trust me, in software engineering, boring deployments are the ultimate goal.
The core takeaway from our source material is simple, but man, it is powerful. Modern deployment starts with automation, master Azure DevOps, master your career. Understanding these pipelines, really understanding how Azure Container Registry talks to Azure Kubernetes Service, or how to write a YAML file that completely automates your infrastructure, these are exactly the kinds of skills that separate an average engineer from an elite architect.
The tools are all literally right there. So here's my final question for you. Are you going to keep treating deployments as a Friday afternoon gamble, or are you ready to build the automated pipelines that do all the heavy lifting for you? Take control of your cloud architecture, dive deeper, start automating, and completely transform the way you handle deployments. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next deep dive.